Hello, family. Welcome to the Wealth Cycle. We do this every year, and we ran an episode and we started talking about voting. And we found out the importance of voting. And just so you know, there are 5 reasons why it's very important that you vote. Number 1 is elections have consequences. That's right, when you don't vote, or if you do vote, it has consequences, meaning on your quality of life. There are certain areas of education that you vote on, certain things in the area of affordable housing. There's also things that are ballots and measures in the area of environment. And then also, you guys, did someone say money? Also, there are things that you are taxed on in these areas. So you want to find out what's going on and how you can affect change and make an impact in the community. And we're going to be covering that tonight on The Wealth Cycle. So are you ready? Ready, set, vote. Hey family, give me a high five. I bet you there's 5 people that you can think of that you can share this with. We want to make it easy for you to ask a question. Just put it right there in the chat. We may not be able to answer all the questions, but we'll do our very best. Hey family, Pastor George here. Again, glad you're back for another episode of The Wealth Cycle. You guys, our last episode, we were covering all of the propositions. Man, we almost had to sing Schoolhouse Rock. You know, there's this guy, right? His name is Bill, right? And he got all the way to Capitol Hill, right? Okay, if you guys want to know more about that, check out our last episode. We talked about the propositions of abortion, sports, wagering, things like that, and then arts and public schools. But right now, we're going to have our second part. We're going to talk about the propositions. And again, these are things that are voted on and then actually become into state. They can be state laws and things that pass. So that's how we can be involved. So we want to give you information in that area. And with us today, by the way, we got Erin.
Hi.
Came back. Blogger, author. Christian author. That's right. And also, she's also an advocate and also helping in the area of political and also our expert in that area. And then also we got Crystal back. She's going to show you actually not only some information about that, also save you a little bit of money along the way. Okay. All right. So now let's just get right into it. So let's talk about proposition. And by the way, they run the most ads. Whenever I see them, they seem to be running a lot of ads.
Yeah.
So we're going to do Proposition 29. That's enacting staffing requirements and reporting requirements and ownership disclosures and closing requirements for chronic dialysis clinics. So anyway, it's more things for the clinics. So Erin, just tell us a little bit about that.
I've been doing some research, so we can give you all the information, and so you don't have to do as much. As Crystal says, follow the money. So right now there are 2 companies that run a monopoly on 80% of all the dialysis centers in the state of California, and that is DaVita, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Fresenius. Okay. So right now, Proposition 29 wants this. They want basically, to me, to sum it up, to provide more safety and accountability. So right now, there is no on-staff physician if you are a dialysis patient and you go to these dialysis centers. They want to provide not several doctors, just one at each dialysis center, because what I didn't understand before, and so I started to do the research, is if you are on dialysis, many things can happen as you're getting that, the dialysis for your kidney. You can have a blood infection, you can go into stroke, you can die from that. I did not know that. Right. Did you guys know that?
I know there can be complications.
Yes, they're serious business.
Right.
So what happens now is they have
ready, set, vote. Hey family, give me a high five. I bet you there's 5 people that you can think of that you can share this with. We want to make it easy for you to ask a question. Just put it right there in the chat. We may not be able to answer all the questions, but we'll do our very best. Hey family, Pastor George here. Again, glad you're back for another episode of The Wealth Cycle. You guys, our last episode, we were covering all of the propositions. Man, we almost had to sing Schoolhouse Rock. You know, there's this guy, right? His name is Bill, right? And he got all the way to Capitol Hill, right? Okay, if you guys want to know more about that, check out our last episode. We talked about the propositions of abortion, sports, wagering, things like that, and then arts and public schools. But right now, we're going to have our second part. We're going to talk about the propositions. And again, these are things that are voted on and then actually become into state. They can be state laws and things that pass. So that's how we can be involved. So we want to give you information in that area. And with us today, by the way, we got Erin.
Hi.
Came back. Our blogger, author. Christian author. That's right. And also, she's also an advocate and also helping in the area of political and also our expert in that area. So we got Crystal back. She's going to show you actually not only some information about that, also save you a little bit of money along the way. Okay. All right. So now let's just get right into it. So let's talk about proposition. And by the way, they run the most ads. Whenever I see them, they seem to be running a lot of ads.
Yeah.
So we're going to do Proposition 29. That's enacting staffing requirements and reporting requirements and ownership disclosures and closing requirements for chronic dialysis clinics. So anyway, it's more things for the clinics. So Erin, just tell us a little bit about that.
I've been doing some research, so we can give you all the information, and so you don't have to do as much. As Crystal says, follow the money. So right now, there are two companies that run a monopoly on 80% of all the dialysis centers in the state of California, and that is DaVita, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Fresenius. So right now, Proposition 29 wants this. They want, basically, to me, to sum it up, to provide more safety and accountability. So right now, there is no on-staff physician if you are a dialysis patient and you go to these dialysis centers. They want to provide not several doctors, just one at each dialysis center, because what I didn't understand before, and so I started to do the research, is if you are on dialysis, many things can happen as you're getting that, the dialysis for your kidney. You can have a blood infection, you can go into stroke, you can die from that. I did not know that. Right. Did you guys know that?
I know there can be complications.
Yes, they're serious business.
Right.
So what happens now is they have care technicians and nurses who are grossly understaffed. And so this proposition actually came into play from these workers' unions, from care technicians and nurses who are grossly understaffed and understand that they don't have the facility to do everything and provide everything that they can for dialysis patients. So they want a doctor on staff, so a doctor who could see when somebody may be going into trauma and can get them the care they need versus having to call 911 and have people
and
go
someone drive to them.
Drive to them and then take them to a facility where they need help, and some people die, going through that. So they want that. They want a doctor on site. They want transparency about who owns the clinic, who's benefiting from this. And they want these clinics to have to report infections to the CDC every 3 months because these transfusions can cause infections, and many oftentimes do. So,
can I jump in here?
Yes.
Quick?
Sure.
So, Erin, when you were doing this, and by the way, this is also a beauty of doing this. Erin is right here in person, so I can interrupt her by just going like this and doing this. Is that, Erin, if you remember, we covered this before.
Yes, we did.
So we covered this before, and we were looking at this, and then it didn't pass.
Right, it did not pass.
It did not pass, and then they're bringing it forward again.
The workers'
and what the
union.
argument, the workers' union, what they were saying was like, and then if you look at this, now let's do this, it's just logic and reason, is if they have to call for a doctor or bring an ambulance, let's say that takes 10 minutes or 15 minutes for that to come. Then they have to be driven to a facility. That's like 30 minutes, and sometimes that's just that's not good to have that length of time pass.
That's the difference between life and death.
They call that there's like a period of time they call that when somebody has something to do that. That's number one. But also, if you looked at it in here, it is just having more information so that they know people are properly cared for in doing this. And I remember we talked about this one before.
Yeah. Sure. And so I want to say this, because we've talked about this. The companies who own the majority of dialysis centers have spent $86 million against this proposition going through. The workers' union has spent $7.8 million for it. And we've already talked about how it is necessary to have a physician there on staff. And why is it unreasonable to know who owns these centers.
Well, how about this? Before we did this last, however many years ago it was, I assumed that there had to be a doctor there, right? Who would have ever thought that you didn't need one?
And then, wait, I'm even going to step down. Like, is it okay to have a nurse practitioner, at least somebody or someone?
They have nurses, and they have care technicians, but a nurse is not a doctor.
Right. But so what their protocols are, and that we even have to even tell people to have, hey, can you have a doctor, or at least, and there's also something also written in, I believe, that says like, or just what the plan is. In other words, like that there is, like there's these doctors at these places that can come over that are doing it. You know what I mean? Like there's some plan.
Now listen,
they don't want to be regulated.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. We have the FDA that regulates food, right? That's dead already, that regulates it. So they have to report when salmonella is found and all this. I would have never thought that a dialysis center did not have to report when they're dealing with human life.
It's unconscionable. It really is.
Human life, not have
but
to
just to do that because wouldn't you want, I'm just asking you now, wouldn't you want, if you were going to drop off your wife, mother, daughter, sister, something, would you want to know what happened, what's going on there, or if that's a good clinic?
And if they're reporting to the CDC every time there's an infection, maybe the CDC can come in and say, there's a problem here.
Right.
Let's correct this. Let's see what's going on, which makes everyone healthier. I want to add this, and you're going to love me for this. I checked, and to provide a doctor, which is what they're calling for, would only increase, would cost them about a couple $100,000 for the entire state. I also want to add that the CEO of DaVita makes $73 million a year. They have spent $86 million against this. It would only cost them a couple of $100,000 to be accountable and to make sure their patients are safe. What the problem is, and what's scary for me, and I understand the people who are on dialysis, this is their lifeblood.
Right.
They don't go there for a week. They could die, period. So they don't want it to go away. So there's a lot of fear here. You know what I mean? Because these companies say, well, we just can't afford it, and we'll just take the center away.
Right.
And some people, drive along far ways to get there, or some people it's convenient and they don't have to, so they don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of fear there because they don't have another lifeline, but this is not fair to them in the long run. And so
it'd be good it'd be good to do it.
I'm about to be praying about all this. This is wrong. This is the love of money. And you know what the root of evil. Okay.
That's
I'm just going to say.
The love of all money, the lust. Okay, but also,
that's just my opinion. I'm not saying, but I'm saying Scripture says the love of money. Okay.
All right. As pastor, I'd like to make some comments about what's been said. I've gone, and you're right. I've gone and prayed with people that have dialysis all the time. So this actually is not only just really a financial impact thing. This is actually a caring. This is actually a loving thing. In other words, like if they had a doctor there and everything, and back to the 83 million to the 70 million, what people are that people that are on dialysis, they have a set time that they're coming every week. So it not only affects. That's why they want to have it affects the person. It affects the person that, I'm speaking from not something I read in a book, something I know. When you're driving someone to the dialysis center, you know that time that you're spending and doing that and the schedule. So it's not something that wants to be changed. So you want to know you're taking someone to a place where they're being cared for and that it is regular and that you know that it's a good place. So if you are for this, you would do what, Erin?
You would vote yes on Prop 29. And I also want to speak to that, another point too that I researched. This law, Prop 29, it's not a law yet, Prop 29 wouldn't allow dialysis centers to just shut down. They'd have to check with, I believe, the CDC or the government before they could just shut down. Now they can show that we're not making any money. We need to shut this down, and then they could be allowed to shut it down, but they can't just do it overnight, where a dialysis patient would show up to the center and then it not be there, and then, their life is in jeopardy.
Right.
So they would have to get permission before shutting it down. So you have to think of people's lives. I understand that no one goes into business not to make money.
Yeah, but if we want to think about their life,
right. There can be a balance here where people can make money because they are making money, but consider people's lives too.
Exactly. And then about them opening and closing is they also are going to, we want them to, if there's a problem, then it might be stopped until they can fix the problem or have a remedy. And that's also what helped by them coming to inclusion and doing that. Crystal, anything else before we go to number 30? Proposition number 30. You good?
Well, I do want to say something, but this is just in general, you guys. We're God's people, right? We are a church. We're broadcasting from a church. And we have to vote. Our vote brings power. And we need to vote with compassion for others. We need to think about what would Jesus do. We need to be protecting the elderly, the children, disabled people. We want to meet the needs of the vulnerable. So as we look at these propositions, we want to look at it from the mind's eye of Christ.
Right.
Amen.
And that's right. That is a kingdom voter.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to, and also share that with your family and let other people know what the real facts are. Thank you again, Erin and Crystal. Proposition number 30: increase the tax on personal income above $2 million by 1.75 and dedicate the revenue to zero emission vehicle projects and wildfire prevention programs. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and let Erin say something before I go ahead and make all the comments in the world about why it's crazy. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. It's a miracle. Prop 30 did what no one else has been able to do: bring Republicans and Democrats together to disagree on this. They are united in saying no. So what really happened is, and we talked about this in the last episode, is Newsom had a plan. By 2035, there's going to be only 100% zero emission vehicles. Now, we also said it's ambitious, but it's his hope, and it's a great green hope. So what happens is, he said he made this proclamation that we were going to commit ourselves to do this as a state. And so he said, all the rideshare companies, you have to change your vehicles to zero emission vehicles.
Right.
Lyft got mad and said, I don't think so. I don't want to do that. What we're going to do, because Lyft, as Crystal says, follow the money, is sponsoring this bill. So Lyft came up with Proposition 30. They're one of the big sponsors behind it, where the taxpayers have to get taxed, and those who are, is it those who are making $2 million or more? So you would be taxed. That doesn't need to happen. We are in a surplus. California doesn't need to tax people who are making $2 million or more. I know across the country, if you're watching that sounds like a lot of money. It's a nice amount of money, but not a lot in California. Based on our property, it's just not a lot here. But then it's about intentionality. Lyft's intention in sponsoring this bill is not to have to pay their fair share, which is to change the vehicle. So they want to do shenanigans and put this out.
Against them, so like, we'll come on.
So Newsom is quoted as in saying, this is a cynical scheme devised by a single corporation to funnel state income tax revenue to their company. So rather than pay to change, like Uber and all the other rideshare companies have to do, they came up with this proposition, which, like I said, is miraculous because it's the only thing Republicans and Democrats have agreed on, which is to say no to this.
That's funny. I'm going to do it. Crystal, before I go ahead and make my comments, is there anything you want to say about it?
I think you're going to say it all
right,
for me.
Y'all. Let me just start with this, okay? Sometimes when there's propositions, sometimes they pass because what they'll do is they pick a number, like let's say 2 million, and then someone says, well, it don't affect me. This is what they say. It don't affect me, so just go ahead and pass it.
Right.
And then maybe I'll get an electric vehicle, I'll get something out, but they say it doesn't affect me. But I just want to just take a moment and just say to you that it actually does affect you. So if you work and you have a small business, or you work for a small business, and that owner or they're doing that, and their income in this area is above that, or they own any business, they're actually passing these taxes on to you. They're either going to, number one, not pay the employees as much in doing that. The second is they're going to raise the cost of the products, Or third, they're also going to do other tax maneuvers to actually stay at 1.9 or do these things so it won't really have the effect that they had, right? Like start deferring. There's a whole bunch of things that can be done. We can also cover those on different things, but what's called deferring income. Those are certain things. You guys see compensation, deferred compensation. So this, I actually don't see this really doing anything is my third point, is this. Like, let's say it even goes through and everything. It really won't, you know what I mean? Like if you look at it, have the effect that they will have, but then again, it opens back up that hole. They're going to come back and there'll be another one and lower it down to this. But I'm just saying that's not, I'm sorry, now I'm giving, this is my opinion. I don't think this is a solution.
But it's fact.
Yes. These are all facts now. These are all facts. And but what I'm really trying to get everyone to do is think about it. Like, do you really think that it's going to make zero emission projects and do these things and these things? Like, really, let's work on wildfires. Like these things that are doing, let's really work on projects that are going to do this. But not taxing people over $2 million that's not going to help do that.
And $2 million is just not a lot of money in the state of California. And like Crystal and Pastor George said, it's just going to harm us, the consumer. And it's not doing what it said it's going to do. And it was done for one corporation to funnel state income tax revenue to their company versus doing what we as a state have required for them to do. So that's just, their intention is.
All right. I'm reading this one last time. So if you believe in your mind, I guess, that increasing personal income tax for people above $2 million by 1.75% and would help dictate the revenue to zero emission projects and then wildfire prevention programs, that is a yes. It would be no if you want to, it'd be no if you don't think that's going.
It's a no if you believe it's a bunch of malarkey.
Thank you.
It's a no to shenanigans. No shenanigans. No shenanigans.
I'm just like, anyway. No, I don't know. Maybe some people read it and say, okay. All right, cool. Hey, let's do proposition. You guys hanging in there? Proposition 31, tobacco. We do need to talk about this one.
Yes.
It upholds the ban on flavored tobacco sales. And Erin?
Yes, and I did a lot of research on this one because.
Pages.
Yeah, pages. So in 2020, we passed a law banning the sale of flavored tobacco, menthol, vape pens, that kind of thing. And what happens is when a law like this comes up, they play to our sentiment. They play to our soft spots. So they say, well, these cigarettes or these products are being targeted towards African-American communities, African-American youth. Right? And so, of course, we hear it and we think, well, that's not good. Cigarettes not good. We all understand that causes cancer. And then we immediately vote on it. But I really want to not give my opinion, but break down the facts and really look at this. So in 2020, we passed a law banning it. Philip Morris and other companies, tobacco companies, sued. And so they got a referendum from the courts, which just means they can still sell the flavored tobacco or vape pens until it's decided. So it's sort of like on hold right now. So then they funded this proposition, Prop 31, in hopes that we would vote, a no vote overturns. Okay, so a no vote would overturn 2020 and allow them to keep selling flavored tobacco, okay? So we all understand how it starts. So now I wanted to look at the information behind it and exactly who it is affecting, because they said it was affecting communities of colors, more specifically the African American community. So California has the lowest percentage of smokers or people who consume tobacco in the country. Now that's not surprising because we're kind of health conscious in this state, so that wasn't surprising to me. Now, of our low percentage, the most people who do consume flavored tobacco or menthol cigarettes are African American, are the African American community. That said, it's African American adults. African American youth are actually the lowest percentage of youth to consume tobacco products, lower than white youth, lower than Hispanic, lower than Asian, lower than Pacific Islander. Our African American youth do not really consume vape pens or, for tobacco. So when they say that it's targeting or that it's affecting African American youth, then, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So it is not, our kids are just not choosing to do that. So that to me was moot. So when you say it's targeting our youth, if you have a bunch of adults doing it and the youth aren't, doing it too, then that says something. So then that's not true. The other thing is they tried this in Massachusetts. So when they tried this in Massachusetts, they passed it, no flavor menthol or cigarettes or tobacco products being passed. The state lost $125 million in revenue. Right. And then what happens is, and I think we all know this.
Went to Connecticut. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what happens when you tell adults, no, you can't do that? Right. They go find where they can do that. Right. And so they went to the neighboring states and did that. So what also can happen if we say, hey, we don't care that it's not affecting the youth, we just don't want it being sold, adults will find a way and people will put it on the black market. So then you have, if African Americans are the biggest consumer of tobacco products that are flavored, if we're dealing with the black market, then who are we dealing with? The police. And we all know how well that works for us. When you think of these things, you have to think of the end result. So if we put it on, if we ban this, it will go to the black market. We just know that that's what's going to happen. And then adults will make decisions and try to get it another way, or they'll go back to cigarettes. And I understand that when it comes to vaping and cigarettes, the cigarettes are a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more unhealthy than vape pens. And so that's all I have to say about it. I just think we should all know the facts, which is one, African American youth are not using, or they're using at the lowest, not only in this state, but in the nation, these products, and that, adults are basically choosing this. And if we will lose revenue as a state, and they will, target the black market if adults just want to get these cigarettes.
Gotcha. Anything else you want to add to that?
I feel like she has a lot. I can't wait to hear what she says.
Well, you know what? It's like you said, they play to your heartstrings. Mm-hmm. This flavored stuff is fairly new. This isn't something that we know a whole lot about. And the health consequences. So I'm looking far beyond just us being able to sell it. Mm-hmm. It is that it's a health consequence, period, and we don't know how it's going to affect us. But I definitely, as Erin started out with, we have to follow the money, guys. Who is pushing this? And understand the reason why. I appreciate the facts, understanding and knowing that African American children are the lowest to utilize the product. But again, just thinking health conscious wise, I don't want you or anybody else smoking, right? I really don't. But then again, it's not my responsibility, nor can I impede upon your right to choose. So, and that falls back on other things also. Right. So I'm torn with it, but your explanation broadens my thought. And so I really have to think twice about what I initially thought about this particular proposition.
Gotcha. And that's why we do this, actually, is that what we want to do is that, see, these propositions, they're just written, if you guys look at this, these are all written in a couple of sentences and saying, this is what it is. Right. But then one of the things, the value that's brought to it is that, Erin, as you're going through it, you're breaking down the different ways of, hey, look, if you do vote, yes, this is what this means. If you do vote, no, because like a lot of people don't know, hey, if you do this and then it comes this way, what other people or what happens in this state affects what happens in other states. So really think about that. And that's why you sit down and go over with your family. And that's why we call this kitchen table conversations, is that you go over this with your family. You say, hey, we're not at the kitchen table, but now how do you do kitchen table conversations? On Zoom, you may do them however you do it, but you want to be able to talk about these issues because maybe it hasn't been talked about, so that you can decide not only what's best for your family, but you want to do what's best for even your community, because that's why we do all this voting, and that we're doing things is that the changes that you make also affect your community. Also, I want to see if there's anything else that you wanted to add about today's session, and then I'd like to just make some concluding remarks.
Most definitely. Because we're talking about voting, I need people to understand registration. Wherever you are in the country, please make sure that you are registered to vote. Double check that if you have to. There have been so many laws passed that are restricting voters, that have merged files or purged files, that I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to voice your concerns and vote. So I want to encourage everyone to check your voter registration. I also want to state that for the state of California, whoop, whoop, I'm happy that we don't have the ID requirements. So you need to, if your state is requiring specific identification, try and ensure that you get Big Mama the right identification so that she can go down. Because sometimes just her Medicare card is not going to work. She might need a picture ID. And heaven knows a lot of us were birthed at home in that era, so a birth certificate might not be available. So just do your due diligence in ensuring that you have the proper identification for the state that you're in, so that when you do vote, you can, and they're not restricting you, that you have registered, that you are registered. And I also want to speak to those who are formerly incarcerated. Just because you were formerly incarcerated does not mean that you cannot vote. It depends on your state law. So double check that to make sure. Or you might have done the time that you needed, the time might have passed from the time that you were incarcerated and off parole or probation, that you can now vote. So double check those things, you guys, so that your voice is heard in this, in this particular, in the elections of 2022. And also that these elections, they affect us more in our bottom line and in our life than the presidential elections. We have this false idea that, the presidential election is the one that is the most impactful. But in all honesty, these right here, these are the ones that are most impactful, because they're going to affect you in your state, in your school system, with your property taxes. And Pastor George already went over those things, so I don't repeat them all. But make sure you're registered.
Right. Good. Portland State.
That's just not what I was going to say.
No problem.
But I'll reiterate really fast. We always get excited about the presidential election, and we're always out there and we're trying to vote for president. But actually, as she said, and what I've said several times when I've met with Pastor George, is you're far more affected by local elections. So we really need to get out there and vote. Your local elections, they just affect you more than the federal government, your state government. So please get out there and vote. This matters. It will affect your schooling. It will affect your job. It will affect how many times you can water your yard. Out here in Burbank, I live in Burbank and we're only allowed to water our yard 2 times a week. So, the minutia of it is very important, and it affects your everyday life. And people think their vote doesn't matter, but it does. This is, at least in our state elections, it isn't. In our national elections, it's a republic, but in our state elections, it's a democracy. So your vote always counts, but it really, really counts in your state elections and your local elections. So get out there, let your voice be heard. Do not be taxed without being represented. You have a right to have a say in what happens in your community and in your state. Right.
So you guys, that's excellent. So there's actually Portland State University did a study, and they found out that 15% of eligible voters turn out for mayor, city council, and local elections.
Wow, 15%.
15%.
So sad. Wow.
And just so you know, that has the biggest effect in these areas.
Yes.
Because I think the president, affordable housing, economic justice, meaning that people being able to get homes and police.
Sorry.
You see that? Okay, all right. Now that's fine.
I love her,
Because she in person, so they have to do it. Instead of Zoom, I can.
They can't mute me.
I can, see, before I was muted. Okay, all right. Anyway, as I was saying, also environmental, also policing, and then also quality education. So these are important areas for you. So that's why we want to make sure that you get involved. So it first starts by you staying informed, and then also you talking to people. Like how we're having a conversation, we want you to have a conversation about it. And then also Fourth, volunteer. That means come out and help,
Yeah.
whether you come and help work at the polls or also maybe either your church or other organizations have an ability for you to be able to volunteer. We also have those opportunities as well. So we'll also put that in the chat and also and do that. So we want to thank you so much for tuning in today, and we'll have future shows that will also be teaching you in the area, not only voting, but just also being able to serve and being a part of the community. And we also call that community engagement. So there's certain things you want to do. You want to engage in the community. And you know how we build the community? One person at a time. So that's how we do it. Again, we want to thank Erin for coming in. Our political strategist, blogger, guru, in all the areas, wealth of information. And also you can find out how they find out more information about you.
You can go to my blog, erinsblog.life.
There you go. And there'll be more information. You can go there and also look at, because you also put out a,
I'll put out a voter guide on Facebook and Instagram. So just follow me. I think I'm Erin Wiley 318.
There you go, man. She got the handles and everything. All right. And then also we want to thank Crystal for also coming in and doing that. Also, on behalf of myself, also Pastor George, I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the Wealth Cycle. So, hey, you guys ready? Ready, set,
vote!
Hey family, give me a high five. I bet you there's 5 people that you can think of that you can share this with. We want to make it easy for you to ask a question. Just put it right there in the chat. We may not be able to answer all the questions, but we'll do our very best.